All right, then welcome to the podcast, Hanna.
Yeah, thank you.
But in this podcast, we're going like into the nitty-gritty of actual making films and getting your first feature film made. So take us back. When did your interest in film start? Were you a movie-watching kid?
Yes, I was very movie-watching kid. My parents were also directors in television, and they showed me a lot of old classic films. So I really fell in love with the cinematic way of storytelling, and I always felt that films speak my language, and they are kind of my way of communicating and speaking. So that's why I fell in love with films.
But how was it? Did you have like a home video camera that you were playing around with, or?
Yes, we did. And when I was 10, I started to make these own films with my friends, and and so we kind of had our own production company, so to speak, with my friends when we were kids, and we made a lot of films, and that was a lot of fun.
What was it called?
It was called, let's see.
What was the company called?
Yeah, in Finnish it's lentävät lokit, so it's flying seagulls in English.
When did you have any like early like cinema experience, or maybe sometimes you watch a movie in VHS and you remember it like a grand thing? Have you like any early experiences that really inspired you to make your own movies?
Well, one of my biggest inspirations have been, I love Akira Kurosawa's films. They are kind of, he has always been my idol, not so that I would like to make same kind of films as he has done, but I have always admired his the rhythm in his films and the visuality and the humanity in his films, and Luchino Visconti's films I have always loved. So they are a couple of kind of my idols that I have always had.
How did you, like in your head, think, how do I get into making films here in Finland? Did you see like some sort of pattern you should follow? Do you remember your thought process as a younger version of yourself?
Well, I always wanted to go to the film school because, well, of course, you can also start to be a filmmaker without going to the film school. But I always wanted to go to film school because, and I think it was a good decision in many ways because there you can really concentrate in learning and get connections and learn together with all the other students. And I think that is very useful and very useful to get feedback and do a lot of exercises. And so yeah, I think it was a good decision. And yeah, so I always thought that I will go to film school and then I will start to make films. So that's what I always thought.
Did you meet any important people like in your filmmaking life in the film school that have followed you in your career?
Well, the Finnish film industry is very small, so it's very really about everybody knowing each other. And yes, it was very useful really to go to a film school because then you really got to know the whole industry and get connections. And also I've been part of the Finnish Film Directors Guild, and there it's very nice because you can like in kind of all our little celebrations, you can basically meet about all the Finnish directors all together, and I always like how supportive everybody is. So there's very this kind of that we are colleagues together and we all support each other, and I really appreciate that.
And growing up, it sounds like your idols they made like drama to maybe art house films, like serious movies. But have you had any soft spot for genre? Since we'll be soon talking about a genre movie you just made.
Yeah, that is actually interesting because I have always been afraid of horror films because I have so strong imagination. So every time I see a horror film, I started to imagine all those murderers and monsters kind of moving into my wardrobe. So this kind of image of having an imaginary monster in your wardrobe is something that I kind of put also in this Ruva film. And yeah, but actually because I have always been afraid of horror films, I have also been fascinated about telling stories of fear because it's so strong emotion. And also in horror films, you can really portray some inner emotions of the character in very interesting external ways. So so I haven't been fan of horror films, but I especially when we were developing the film Ruva, I really had to watch loads and loads of horror films that I had avoided, and then I really felt like at home when watching them because they showed all the fears I have had when I was a child. So so I really enjoyed them.
How has the fear evolved? Because I remember when I watched the original Halloween. It's one of my favorite horror movies. And by myself in my room, and I lived on the third floor. I remember in a building, and I was sure that I was gonna get murdered. Like Michael Myers was gonna knock on my door. I mean, the fear is so interesting, especially in the evening. I was like, it's gonna happen. I'm dead now. I feel it, the fear in my body. But now it's harder, like, to really, for me, like, feel the fear I used to feel when I was younger. How has your fear evolved?
It has evolved in that sense also, and maybe especially after watching this, I don't know how many horror films I watched when developing this Ruva film. So that was very kind of a therapy for me. And after that, I have stopped being afraid of horror films, and all these imaginary fears have kind of disappeared. So it has happened to me as well.
This is interesting. If you're watching movie like as research, I think theoretically it's not as scary as if you were just watching, right?
Yeah, definitely. And when I really watched them as research, then I was really concentrating on how everything is made, and then I kind of got to the conclusion that, this is not real. Somebody has actually made these films, which was like, whoa. So that's how I stopped being afraid of them.
And as a filmmaker, sometimes it goes in different stages, at least for me. Like you start off innocent and fresh, and then you start learning about how to make a movie, and you start to think about the cinematography and the choices. And now I've come around, I don't see that anymore. I'm just like appreciative of everything. I become very like, that's good. You know, that's good. It's different waves. Like, can you relate to that? Have you had like, what was your relationship to actually watching movies as you started working or wanted to work in the movies?
Because my parents were filmmakers, so I have really grown up watching film in a way that my parents had explained how this is made and so on. So I have really, from very early on, even as a child, I had kind of learned to kind of understand how things are made. So when I went to film school and graduated from the film school, that didn't really make difference. I had kind of learned to watch films as films, but I noticed that when I'm working on some film, and especially when I have some problems with something, for example, some scene, and I don't know how to make that scene, then during that period, I really kind of concentrate on, when I watch some other film, that how everything is made, but then that disappears when I stop making that kind of particular scene again. Unfortunately, I do notice that, especially when I'm in the middle of making some film, then I really don't want to watch very intelligent films or very good films, because then it would just, I don't know, I would use the same side of my brain or something like that. So then it's easier actually to watch something very easy, some series from Netflix or whatever, just something super easy. And it's more difficult actually to watch some films that are my favorite films, like some Kurosawa's films or something like that, because they really need some concentration. So I really have to, I notice sometimes that I have to force myself to watch some very good films, and then I'm happy that I watch them. But it's easier to watch something not so good.
When you went to film school, did you make like a last short film? What was the final project you made?
Yeah, I made a short film. It was called Shadows. And that was about a young woman who comes to visit her childhood home and realizes that the forest of her childhood home is kind of disappeared, is chopped down, and then she starts to imagine her as a child, and the scenes happen between this adult woman and the child, and she remembers how as a child she loved the forest but was afraid of this imaginary boogeyman that she imagined coming from the woods, and now as a grown-up she is not afraid of boogeyman anymore, but instead of the reality where the forest of her childhood and maybe her imagination is disappeared. So it's kind of a poetic drama.
It sounds poetic, but also it sounds genre.
Yeah.
Also, how did your thought process, you think, go into making it that, not just a drama?
It came very natural to me, and my ideas tend to have some horror or genre elements in them, because really having this memory of having imaginary boogeyman and then you learn to control it is something kind of memory of my childhood. So yeah, and in that short film there is kind of horrorish scenes of a girl being afraid of the voices in her room and so on. So yeah, I've always had a lot of horror elements in my films.
When you're starting out, a lot of things you just do it by instinct, like or maybe inspired by some other filmmaker. Did you think of yourself then that you will actually be making genre movies? So did you think, oh, this is just this story now, and this is a bit genre-y? At that age, do you remember what type of director you thought your career would evolve to?
No, I didn't really think about that, and I've always thought about the story first and how that story wants to be told. Also in Hatching, when Ruva, it's Hatching in English, Ruva in Swedish. So when we started to work with Ruva, with the screenwriter Ilja Rautsi, and we developed the story together. So we really started to talk about the story, and the story told us that it wants to be a horror film. And also in this film Shadows, it was the same thing. And when I design and plan some film, I never think about other films or inspiration from other films, because as an audience I love many different kind of films, but as a filmmaker I feel that those films are already made and good, and then I don't want to repeat them because they are already made. So I want to do something else and tell the story. So that is my way of thinking.
And how was the reception of your short film Shadows?
Yeah, it was good. It went around in festivals and won a couple of rewards and so on. So yeah, so that was very, very nice.
You're fresh out of film school, you have your well-received short film in the bag. How's life looking?
Well,
do you remember what were the next steps?
Yeah, well, then my next step actually was that I wrote a TV series, drama series for children, and I also directed that. That was our national broadcast YLE, and so that was what I did the next time. And then I worked on some short films after that, and developed some feature films, but it actually took quite a while before I got my first feature film Ruva made. And it's I think it's never really easy to be a filmmaker. It's yeah, there's never really easy way. Nothing smooth.
Because watching your IMDb list, you see a common theme of young people in different situations, sometimes a bit genre-ish, sometimes the other type of parallel or manipulation.
Yeah.
How were you thinking about your career? Like, were you afraid maybe you will get typecast in making like young adults series or films? Because in Sweden, well, everywhere, once you're good at something, that's what you get offered.
Yeah, well, I definitely, since maybe not so much young adult stories, but since the first kind of bigger thing I did was this children's series, so then I was really typecast to be a children's director, and also in Ruva there is a child as lead character. I do like to tell stories about children, because what is fascinating about the childhood is that at that time you really experience everything the first time, and that is very fascinating. And yeah, but for me, directing children doesn't mean that I would only like to direct films for children. But that was really, I think, what was really kind of thought that is all what I want to do. And it took some time to kind of get rid of that label.
What's your approach to both casting and working with young actors?
Yes, what the most important thing that it needs, it's a huge time for casting. And for example, for Ruva, we auditioned 1,200 girls all around Finland for the main part of this girl, and that is actually a double role that she's playing, and it was so difficult that I knew that we really have to audition huge amount of girls to find the right girl. And yeah, and then we found Siiri Solalinna, who's just wonderful, and she had never acted anywhere before and had just turned 12, and yeah, she's wonderful. So yeah, it's for me, it's all about finding the right children and then also having a long rehearsal. So we really had time to rehearse the scenes and for all the actors to get to know each other. And for me, it was very important that the children feel safe, since this Ruva is not really it's definitely not a film for children. So, and it's a scary film. So it was very important that the children are not afraid in the shootings in real lives, and they don't find it kind of anxious, all these scenes. So we really had long rehearsals, and I'm really for rehearsing.
Can you tell us about your first TV series, how that came about? Was it your idea, or were you presented with an idea?
It was my own idea, and it tells about two sisters who are 6 and 8 years old, and the whole story is that they play all kind of games, and suddenly their games become real adventures. And what I really wanted was to give kind of homage to my childhood games, and kind of inspire children to play and use their imagination, because I think that it's so important that the children play games and don't just do something that is kind of scheduled for them by grown-ups. So it's not all about just doing some hobbies and then watching television. It's I think it's very important that children kind of use their imagination and play games with each other.
But how was it going from shorter formats to a TV series? And also it's special because when it's a national television TV series, at least in Sweden, children program it's in a certain budget and length. How was that process? Like your thought going into it and then actually, making it, how many pages a day and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, the pace was kind of quicker than I have done in my short film, but it was kind of like 4 pages a day. But of course, with children, they have kind of shorter working hours than the grown-ups, and yeah. But other than that, it was really it wasn't so different for making the short film, since this series also was kind of collage of several short stories, in a sense that each story was kind of its own short film in a way, but with the same characters.
But how was that experience? Like, was it like you had imagined? Did you take any learnings from it?
Well, it was I would say it was just loads of fun, and because it was so great to work with these kids. We had 4 kids there, in these 2 girls and 2 boys, and that was just so fun, and they were so good. Also in that series we had huge auditions. I think in that series altogether we auditioned like 2,000 children for these 4 parts, and we just found perfect kids, and yeah, I think it's very fun to work with kids, because when you have found the right kids and you had time to rehearse everything, and they have got used to me and for everybody else, it's actually very easy to work with them, and they complain a lot less than the grown-ups. So that is nice. Your
personality when working with children, how are you? Are you like more like a friend, or more like an adult that gives them tips? Have you ever thought about, after you do as direct for a while, you start to see some patterns, I think, in your one's behavior.
Yeah. Well, I think as a director, I really direct the children kind of the same way as the grown-up. So I'm really a director in the set, not so much the friend. But of course, I talk to kids a little bit different way than for the grown-ups, because they wouldn't understand the same way of talking. So when I direct children, I used to like to kind of always remind them why they are doing something. For example, that because you don't have anything to do in this scene and you're bored, so go and ask your sister in the scene to what you could do, and so I always kind of try to guide them in them understanding why they are doing something, and like to keep it kind of open so that they can kind of tell their opinions and suggestions that, oh, what if I could do it like this, and so on. So yeah.
You can always edit together something from a performance, especially a kid's performance. And sometimes, I also edit movies, so I know how to cheat. And a lot of times you really have to cheat a lot when having children in main parts. But then, now and then you have some kids that really, surprise you and really add to the, like you said, they are like grown-up actors and even better. Like, what are you looking for when you cast? Is this type of thing you're looking for when you get a lot of stuff from the actors?
Yeah.
They're, how you say, self-going.
Yeah, well, I happen to have had the type of roles for children in my TV series and in Ruva where it's not even possible to kind of cheat something and use small clips, because the children are the lead characters and they are the ones who just have to kind of hold the performance during the whole scene often. So it's not possible to just try to cheat and find some small good moments, and then they have to be good all the time, and that is very demanding, super demanding for the kids. And so then it's really about, what I'm looking for is someone, first of all, who can do this, who can hold the performance and this kind of being in the role and in the moment, not just for a short while, but during the whole length of the scene. And what I'm also looking for, it's I think it's beneficial if the child has had some kind of group hobby, so that she's learned to kind of work in a group, not just to shine by herself, but to really work together with lots of people and understand that you have to repeat things over and over again. So they have kind of, it's important to get kind of kid who can take the long hours and is willing to repeat things. And also what I'm always looking for is the kind of energy in the child that fits for the part. It's actually not true that children play themselves. I think none of them really play themselves. They play a character, but I think the type of energy is something they can't fake. So it's if I want someone who is very kind of aggressive or angry, it could be that child is not like that at all, but maybe the child has some energy or something that can be turned into kind of anger, even though the energy originally might have been just to be kind of joyful.
After the series was done, how was it received?
Yeah, it was very well received, and I really like, because it's still in our YLE arena, which is the platform for all our YLE programs. So it's still kind of going there, and it's fun to hear every now and then that new generations of kids kind of found the series and fall in love with that, and that is a lot of fun.
Were you thinking after the series, it's like, now I'm making my feature, now I paid my dues?
yeah, I did. Yeah, and I did develop some features that didn't then go forward, and so I met Ilja Rautsi in this kind of screenwriters and directors speed meeting where each can present their ideas in very short amount of time. And then Ilja told me his idea that a boy hatches a doppelganger out of an egg, and that is basically the idea he had. And I found that is a super cool idea, and then I just wanted to change the lead character into a girl, and then we started to develop the story together, and that was very fun.
Are you like open to other people's ideas? Because it sounds like you're very like most creators. We want to create our own stuff.
Yeah.
That's the best ones. Why can't everyone understand that these ideas? Why can't they love it as much as me? How was it with this? Did you admire maybe also his previous work? What was it about him that made you?
Well, it was because I also it's very important to me to direct my kind of films, and that I can really feel that I kind of, it's my world in a sense, but it was basically, I haven't. At that point, Ilja hasn't done his short films that he has now done. He has also directed short films, and so basically it was just that one sentence, the boy hatching an evil doppelganger out of an egg. And and then we started to talking, and it seemed like our ways of thinking are very similar. We have quite similar ideas and similar visuality in our ideas. And it just happened that our ideas just worked very well together. So that was very cool process to develop this story of hatching, because our ideas really kind of build it on top of each other, and that was very nice.
When you see his filmography to them, just by the title, it feels like he's a bit of a provocative, The titles are very like cool. It really feels like your two styles really matched in this project. Since you have done this TV series in national TV, you were more like, broad, mainstream, and what he had done until then was a bit more, edgy, and maybe you also as a filmmaker identify more with his type of stuff than you had the chance to actually do in the project.
Well, I wouldn't say that because I think his stuff is his stuff, so I don't identify myself with that, but I kind of, I would say I identify myself as kind of art house films. And for me, it's actually, I consider myself as a filmmaker, not so much as just genre filmmaker, but I do love to mix genres in my work. And so maybe I consider myself as an art house filmmaker. And but it's... Ilja, I don't want to speak for him, but at some point he has said himself that whenever his idea is kind of horror comedy, then he wants to direct that himself. So it seems like that is really his thing, and maybe horror comedies are not so much what I'm after, even though there is a lot of humor in hatching, which I kind of like, and that is also something I brought into that. But it really seemed that our styles really worked well together.
Yeah, and now when I'm talking about your filmography, that I like to discuss this type of thing, because one thing is like industry perception, and one thing is, what you want to do and what you feel you're doing, and it's very rarely in line. So that's very there are a lot of very successful Swedish filmmakers that do like broad, big films for younger or family audiences, and that's everything they get pitched, and they're like, why can't someone pitch me a horror movie? I love horror movies, for example. I usually just ask them, what do you like, instead of like, you've done this before, can you do it again? Have you felt a bit of that you get offered the stuff?
Well, maybe it was basically, in my case, it was basically that since I had directed children, that I was considered that, you only want to make children's films. But also before hatching, I had written and directed a short film called Puppet Master, which is kind of a genre-ish film. It's about a woman who is so lonely that she lets a man to transform her into a puppet in order to someone to love her, and the scenes really happen between the man and the puppet that is kind of puppeteered in the film, and there's no dialogue. in the film, and that is kind of a fantasy drama with horror elements. And that film was also kind of it was shown in MoMA, in New York Museum of Modern Arts, and in Fantastic Fest and Fantasia. So before Hatching, I did have also some genre elements in my films.
When talking about the festival, can you tell me about your festival experience with your short films? Because that's a different, type of life in itself. That's very exciting. You meet a lot of cool people. Can you tell us about, like, do you remember your first major festival that you attended with a short? What was that experience like?
Well, of course, in Finland we have very cool Tampere Film Festival, which is very, very good and respected short film festival, and I really appreciate that festival a lot. And for me also with the Puppet Master, since its premiere was in Fantasia, and that was also very important to me. And it's also at festivals, what is great is that the audience is usually so appreciative for the films, and they're really film fans, and so it's always sort of fun to watch your film with the audience, kind of nervous and fun. So it's kind of cool to feel they're reacting. So I always love that.
I think that's something that's very important for a filmmaker, to actually know your audience, and seeing a film in a theater actually gives you that sensation. You really know when a movie works and doesn't work, and in a way that even when screening it, like for friends and family, 1 second before you start, you have 10 changes. You're like, I know exactly what to do, but 1 minute earlier you're like, this is pretty close to the finished product. Has that informed your filmmaking? Do you think you've gained some instincts by just being in the festival circuit, showing your films?
Well, maybe not so much the audience's reactions, but I think it was very useful, since also in Hatching we were pitching the film a lot in several forums and workshops and so on, and that was very useful to learn how to present your film in very early stage, in a sense that it would kind of get the financiers' interest and so on. So I found that very useful, and then you can also test your idea, that how well it works, and you can also test that how well do I really know what this film is about. So I find that very useful as well.
Genre films in general in Finland, what's the situation, or what has been until maybe now with the streamers, everything has changed. I used to tell, it used to be a certain way. Now it's like, hey, you have a good idea and a resume, everything's possible. But it didn't used to be like that, especially with state-funded, film industries. But also, it's it's small in every country. But maybe in America, it's so big that you can do. Has the horror scene been historically? Give us a Finnish. Local.
Well, we haven't had that many genre films in Finland, and I actually wonder why, because I think we Finnish people tend to be a bit kind of dark mooded, so I think horror film would really fit our personality very well. But no, we haven't had many horror films, just a couple of horror films in before Hatching, kind of. There was a Budom and Sauna and some of those films, and in 50s there was very, very good film called The White Deer, which is a kind of old classic, very wonderful film, and after that very, very few. So that's actually interesting. It's basically have been drama and comedy and some kind of crime films that we have had.
You've mentioned about the pitching process, and that's to get some of the financing and maybe co-productions for a project like Ruva. But how was it like in Finland? Did you go to the Finnish Film Institute to get like script development? Tell us about that process.
Yeah, we our biggest financier was the Finnish Film Foundation and YLE together, and then we also had a Swedish Film Foundation on board and Swedish Television, and then Wild Bunch International came as our sales agent, and and then we also got some money from Latvia, and our from U Media, our VFX company, came as a financier as well from Belgium. So it was really and we got some money from Norway as well. So it really was a co-production of several countries.
In the title cards, one of the main persons mentioned is the like practical effects department. That must be a really big conversation. Like, is it a puppet? Is it CGI? You know, what was that journey, and what's your personal preference?
That it was from very early on, since in hatching in Ruva we have this monster creature. So I really wanted it not to be a digital character, but instead this kind of animatronic puppet, which is a puppet that's facial expressions move with remote controls. So since I really wanted this creature to have a physical presence, and then I knew that we need the best possible person to do it. So I actually Googled the best animatronic designer in the world, and Google told me that is Gustav Högen from London, originally from Netherlands, and he has designed the main creatures for the Star Wars films and Prometheus and Jurassic World. So I contacted him, and he got excited coming on board and collected a wonderful team around him, and we designed the creature's look in Finland. And then also, since in the film the creature is kind of evolving, so later on it's kind of special effect makeup on actor's face, and then we got Conor O'Sullivan, who has 2 Oscar nominations, and he has done the Saving Private Ryan and Dark Knight and Game of Thrones. So he and his team came on board in making these special effect makeup, and also U-Media did some VFX work in the end part of the film, and it was really a collaboration of all those teams, and I'm super happy about their work.
When you described the look, what did you tell people? Like, I know you also have pictures, but what was like your emotional, what?
Yeah. Well, we have kind of reference pictures, but also my emotional story, what I wanted to tell through this creature was that it's kind of partly very thin, anorectically thin girl, partly a bird, and there is this kind of theme of eating disorder. So I wanted it to be very thin, and it's totally deformed and totally disgusting. So it's everything that this girl's mother doesn't want her daughter to be. So it's not like perfect gymnast, it can't even walk properly. And I said that I feel the creature is kind of like a smelly teenager who is raging to its parents and at the same time just wants to be loved. And so I really wanted that this is not an evil character, it also has some sympathetic features in it, even though it's so disgusting and ugly. So it has kind of big eyes, and it's very kind of innocent also in a way.
On shooting the actual animatronic on set, how was that experience?
Well, it was really that was really a lot of fun, because we had 5 puppeteers moving the puppet's body with rods, and they were all super nice. They had worked in all Star Wars films and had huge experience in films, and then we also had Gustav Högen, who was moving the facial expressions with remote controls, and in the edit our footage looked very hilarious with all these people with green costumes around this monster, and it took several takes always to make the puppet really believable and make it look like it's alive. But I mean, they were super good at their work.
I mean, having a character that's animatronic, or even like a supernatural character that's it's not just there to scare people, that's a big like tonal thing you have to balance if you want to have the film believable. Because when you look at the poster, it looked maybe like it could be a haunted house drama, and that's manageable. Like, it's not easy, but it's manageable to make that type of movie. And then you add this element that if it's not done right, maybe people start laughing. Once you see it, how did you balance that? What was your thought process?
Well, that was really the reason why I wanted the best possible people to do it, so that it's totally believable. Because if it's not done well enough, if it's not done right, then it just looks horrible. And then also it was very important that this creature is kind of one main character in the film, and also the interaction between the creature and the girl is very important in the film. And I also feel that the creature is something that the girl is afraid in this film, but also I think the creature is her only friend, and so I really wanted to have kind of genuine emotion, kind of connection and emotion between this girl and the creature in our film.
The cinematography, I would say it's bright for a genre film, and it's also in tone with the themes of this family, this mother wants the perfect life, everything has to be glossy, and even some scarier scenes are set during the day. What was your thought process about the cinematography in general, balancing the horror and, you know, the drama and the puppet character?
Yeah, I really wanted to portray this world as the mother character's world in this film, since the mother in the film is kind of a vlogger, and she's trying to present the perfect image of her family to the whole world, and she's really trying to control everybody in the family, and she doesn't allow any dark secrets in the family, and that's why I also said to our cinematographer that we don't have any dark shadows in the house. We only have very soft light, and all the colors are matching, and these lovely pastel colors. There are no strong colors, no sharp edges in the furnitures, and everything is kind of, there's all those things that you would consider lovely and feminine, kind of pastels, and a lot of roses, and so many roses that is kind of kind of terrifying. And actually the darkest shadows are somewhere where the creature is hiding, but then you can think that maybe in the end the creature is not the creepiest person in the film. And I think that in the shadow where the girl meets the creature, she also meets her kind of biggest sorrows and all her dark emotions, and there's kind of something comforting also in kind of facing your own emotions and kind of feeling that you don't have to kind of ignore them anymore.
A movie with all this visually, tonally different stuff, and thematically also, I can imagine everything comes together really in the edit. Can you quickly talk about the editing progress and maybe shout out a Swedish co-worker?
Yes, yes. So we had our wonderful Swedish editor Linda Jildmalm, who is just wonderful. It was so joy to work with her, really. And I think what was really great about Linda is that she's very good at finding, first of all the best parts in actors' performances, because kind of editor can either make the actors act well or act very poorly if you choose the wrong moments, and she was very good at creating rhythm into these scenes. And also some things we did in the editing process, there were a couple of scenes that we took out from the film in the editing because those scenes weren't concentrated on the main characters, mother and daughter, and we really wanted to focus the film just to tell about the story of mother and daughter and not so much the side characters. And so that was really a big part of our editing process.
I would like to ask you, what do you hope the audiences will feel when watching this movie?
Well, let's say that I don't want to dictate how the audience should feel. Of course, I made the film as the type of film where the film's world gives you a little bit uneasy feeling, because it's not totally fairy tale. It's kind of reality, but it's so perfect and glossy that it seems like something is off and something is wrong. So it's okay to feel a bit uncomfortable when watching this film. And and there's also humor in it, since I think that when things are most tragic in our lives and we just try to cope with the situations and keep ourselves together, we all end up acting in a very comical way. So it's okay to laugh also.
I would also like to add that I really enjoyed that this movie shows the lengths to how people can go through just to keep a family unit together.
Yeah.
Because maybe some people think, wow, this family is really crazy, but the longer you live, the more you realize that, you know, people adapt slowly to everything. So I thought that's a really mature, actually, you know, movie. It's not just, mom and dad, you know, they work, get tired, and the ghost comes, or it's. I think it's very mature in its themes and execution. but that also can be a risk for the audience. And the movie has had premiere in Finland locally, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What's the reactions been?
Yeah, it has been great, and what I really love is that in both the audience's reactions and the reviews that we have got, I love that they have really got the themes of the film about not being accepted fully as you are, as the girl feels, and how horrific that actually can be, and how it can kind of create a monster as it does in this film. And what is great is that it seems like both the horror fans have liked the film, and also those who are afraid of horror films and have kind of went to see the film and they have really loved it. So I as a person who has been afraid of horror films, I have wanted to make this the type of film that both drama film lovers and horror film lovers can like, and it's not too scary for those who are afraid of horror films.
And we're gonna wrap this up with a question I ask every filmmaker. Do you have any tips for the next generation of filmmakers?
Well, I think it's just about trusting your own vision, and then also when you make films, do contact your own idols and ask them to join in to make the film, because in the end, no matter who you are and where are you from, we all just want to make great films together, and in filmmaking there are no actually country barriers. It's all about we all wanting to make great films together.
So you heard it here first. Everybody contact Hanna with your script.
Yeah.
Hanna, it's been a real pleasure talking to you via distance, but I feel we really got a sense of your thought process and Ruva, a little behind the scenes without spoiling too much, I hope. And everyone here in Sweden, watch Ruva Hatching, opening now in cinemas. We're going to release this podcast soon. And thanks a lot for joining us. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Hanna.
It was really great to be here.